We're doing Into the Wild, Part 2. Now let's get started. Afterward, Rusty settled down on top of one of the posts in the fence that marked the limits of his garden. It was a favorite spot of his, as he could see right into the neighboring gardens as well as into the dense green forest on the other side of the garden fence. The rain had stopped. Behind him, the close-cropped lawn was bathed in moonlight, but beyond his fence the woods were full of shadows. Rusty stretched his head forward to take a sniff of the damp air. His skin was warm and dry under his thick coat, but he could feel the weight of raindrops that sparkled on his ginger fur. He heard his owners giving him one last call from the back door. If he went to them now, they would greet him with gentle words and caresses and welcomed him into their bed, where he would curl purring in the crook of a bent knee. But this time, Rusty ignored his owner's voices and turned his gaze back to the forest. The crisp smell of the woods had grown fresher after the rain. Suddenly his spine prickled. Suddenly the fur on his spine prickled. Was something moving out there? Was something watching him? Rusty stared ahead, but it was impossible to see or smell anything in the dark tree-scented air. He lifted his chin boldly, stood up, stretched, one paw gripping each corner of the fence post as he straightened his legs and arched his back. He closed his eyes and breathed in the smell of the woods once more. It seemed to promise him something, tempting him onward into the whispering shadows. Tensing his muscles, he crouched for a moment, then leaped lightly down on the rough grass on the other side of the garden fence. As he landed, the bell on his collar rang out through the still night air. "Where are you off to, Rusty?" meowed a familiar voice behind him. Rusty looked up. A young black and white cat was balancing ungracefully on the fence. "Hello, Smudge," Rusty replied. You're not going into the woods, are you?" Smudge's amber eyes were huge. "Just for a look," Rusty promised, shifting uncomfortably. You wouldn't get me in there. It's dangerous." Smudge wrinkled his black nose with distaste. "Henry said he went into the woods once." The cat lifted his head and gestured with his nose over the rows of fences to the garden where Henry lived. "That fat old tabby never went into the woods," Rusty scoffed. "He's hardly been beyond his own garden since his trip to the vet. All he wants to do is eat and sleep." "No, really, he caught a robin there," Smudge insisted. "Well, if he did, then it was before the vet. Now he complains about birds because they disturb his dozing." "Well, anyway," Smudge went on, ignoring scorn in Rusty's mew, "Henry told me there are all sorts of dangerous animals out there. Huge wildcats who eat live rabbits for breakfast and sharpen their claws in old bones." "I'm only going for a look around," Rusty mewed. "I won't stay long." "Well, don't say I didn't warn you," purred Smudge. The black and white cat turned and plunged off the fence back down into his own garden. Rusty sat down in the coarse grass beyond the garden fence. He gave his shoulders a nervous lick and wondered how much of Smudge's gossip was true. Suddenly, the movement of a tiny creature caught his eye. He watched it scuttle under some brambles. Instinct made him drop into a low crouch. With one slow paw after another, he drew his body forward through the undergrowth. Ears pricked, nostrils flared, eyes unblinking. He moved towards the animal. He could see it clearly now. Sitting up among the barbed branches, nibbling on a large seed he held between his paws. It was a mouse. Rusty rocked his haunches from side to side, preparing a leap. He held his breath in case his bell rang again. Excitement coursed through him, making his heart pound. This was even better than his dreams. Then a sudden noise of cracking twigs and crunching leaves made him jump. His bell jangled treacherously, and the mouse darted away into the thickest tangle of the bramble bush. Rusty stood very still and looked around. He could see the white tip of a red bushy tail trailing through a clump of tall ferns ahead. He smelled a strong, strange scent, definitely a meat-eater, but neither cat nor dog. Distracted, Rusty forgot about the mouse and watched the red tail curiously. He wanted a better look. All of Rusty's sense strained ahead as he prowled forward, but then he detected another noise. It came from behind behind, but sounded muted and distant. He swiveled his ears back to want Ward to hear it better. Paw steps, he wondered, but he kept his eyes fixed on the strange red fur up ahead and continued to creep onward. It was only when the faint rustling behind him became a loud and fast-approaching leaf crackle that Rusty realized he was in danger. The creature hit him like an explosion, and Rusty was thrown sideways into a clump of nettles. Twisting and yelling, he tried to throw off the attacker that had fastened itself into his back. It was gripping him with incredibly sharp claws. Rusty could feel spiked teeth pricking his neck. He writhed and squirmed from whisker to tail, but he couldn't free himself. For a second, he felt helpless. Then he froze. Thinking fast, he flipped over onto his back. He knew instinctively how dangerous it was to expose his soft belly, but it was his only chance. He was lucky. The ploy seemed alert. He had heard a huff beneath him as his breath was knocked out of his attacker. Thrashing fiercely, Rusty managed to wriggle free. Without looking back, he sprinted towards the house. Behind him, he heard paw steps that told Rusty his attacker was giving chase. Even though the pain from his scratches stung beneath his fur, Rusty decided he would rather turn and fight than let himself be jumped on again. He skidded to a stop, spun around, and faced his pursuer. It was another kitten with a thick coat of shaggy gray fur, strong legs, and a broad face. In a heartbeat, Rusty smelled that it was a tom, and he sensed power in the sturdy shoulders underneath the soft coat. The kitten crashed into Rusty at full pelt. Taken by surprise by Rusty's turnabout, it fell back into a dazed heap. The impact knocked the breath out of Rusty, and he staggered. He quickly found his footing and arched his back, puffing out his orange fur, ready to spring onto the kitten. But his attacker simply sat up and began to lick a full forepaw, all signs of aggression gone. Rusty felt strangely disappointed. Every part of him was tense, ready for a battle. "Hi there, kitty pet," meowed the gray Tom cheerily. "You put up quite a fight for a tame kitty." Rusty remained on tiptoe for a second, wondering whether to attack anyway. Then he remembered the strength he had felt in this kitten's paws when he had pinned him to the ground. He dropped onto his pads, loosened his muscles, and let his spine unbend. "And I'll fight you again if I have to," he growled. "I'm Graypaw, by the way," the gray kitten went on, ignoring Rusty's threat. "I'm training to be a ThunderClan warrior." Rusty remained silent. He didn't understand what Gray What's-It was meowing about, but he sensed the threat has passed. He hid his confusion by leaning down to lick his ruffled chest. "What's a kitty pet like you doing out in the woods? Don't you know it's dangerous?" asked Graystripe. "If you're the most dangerous thing in the woods If you're the most dangerous thing the woods has to offer, I think I can handle it," Rusty bluffed. Graypaw looked up at him for a moment, narrowing his big yellow eyes. "Oh, I'm far from the most dangerous. If I were even half a warrior, I'd have given an intruder like you some real wounds to think about." Rusty felt a thrill of fear at these ominous words. What did this cat mean by intruder? "Anyway," meowed Graypaw, using his sharp teeth to tug a clump of grass from his claws. "I didn't think it was worth hurting you. You're obviously not from one of the other clans." "Other clans?" Rusty echoed, confused. Graypaw let out an impatient hiss. "You must have heard of the 4 warrior clans that hunt around here. I belong to ThunderClan. The other clans are trying to steal prey from our territory, especially ShadowClan. They're so fierce they would have ripped you to shreds, no questions asked." Graypaw paused to spit angrily and continued. "They come to take prey that's rightfully ours. It's the job of ThunderClan warriors to keep them out of our territory. When I finish my territory, I'll be so dangerous, all of the other clans shaking in their flea-bitten skins. They won't dare come near us then." Rusty narrowed his eyes. This must be one of the wildcats Smudge had warned him about. Living rough in the woods, hunting and fighting each other for every last scrap of food. Yet Rusty didn't feel scared. In fact, it was hard not to admire the confident kitten. "So you're not a warrior yet?" he asked. "Why? Did you think I was?" Graypaw purred proudly. Then he shook his wide furry head. "I won't be a real warrior for ages. I have to go through the training first. Kids have to be 6 moons old before they can even begin training. Tonight is my first night out as an apprentice." "Why don't you find yourself an owner with a nice, cozy house instead? Your life would be much